It's Shauna with Just Try to Be Nice, and this is a video on how to make homemade Pedialyte. If you don't know about Pedialyte, you should. Pedialyte is it's an electrolyte replenishing solution. So if you're very sick and you're throwing up a lot and you have a lot of diarrhea and you just can't keep anything down, then you'll lose your fluids and then you'll get dehydrated and then you have to go to the hospital and you have to get an IV of fluids. But this will stop you from having to do that. The Pedialyte will help you to replenish your electrolytes, and it will help you to stay healthier without having to go to the hospital. So it's really easy to make at home. It's very expensive at the store, though. If you go to the store, it's about $5 for a 16-ounce thing of it, and it literally costs probably less than $1 to make a big pitcher of it. So that's why I'm doing this video. So it's very simple ingredients, and I'll pause the video right now and I'll show you what you need to put in it. These are the ingredients. They're very simple. It is 2 teaspoons of Jell-O, but I use 3. I don't use 2, I use 3. 3½ cups of water, cold water. Half of a cup of hot water, because you have to dissolve the Jell-O and the salt and the sugar. 3 tablespoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt. Now, just in case you have no idea what the difference between a tablespoon and a teaspoon are, because, hey, just because you're watching this video doesn't mean that you've watched my other cooking videos, so I'm not going to assume that you know anything. Maybe your kid's just really sick, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're just trying to find a video on how to make Pedialyte. So I'm going to make it real simple for you. This spoon is a tablespoon. This spoon is a teaspoon. See the difference between the two? Teaspoon fits into the tablespoon. So you don't want to mess up and accidentally use a tablespoon of salt, because that'll be too much salt. So if you don't have measuring spoons, which most people don't if you don't cook, this spoon, like the big spoon, is a tablespoon, and the tiny spoon is a teaspoon. So the very first thing you want to do is mix this all together. So I'm going to set you down right over here. I'm going to set you right here so I can show you. It's really easy. So again, teaspoon, tablespoon. I like to use an old jar that I have because I have a ton of them. I keep all my old jars. So first thing you want to do is take your 2 teaspoons of Jell-O. I use 3 because I like it to have a lot of flavor, and so do my kids. Like if you buy Pedialyte, it's very flavorful. If you buy the store brand of Pedialyte, it's not as flavorful. It'll do the same thing, but it's not as flavorful. And my kids like the flavor. So I put the 3 teaspoons of Jell-O in the bottom of the jar. Then the next thing you want to put in is the 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which I didn't need to put these in jars. I could have just put them in bowls. I could have just put them directly in here. But I did this for you. So, then you want to put in your 3 teaspoons of sugar. And you have to have 1/2 cup of hot water. Now this is hot because it came out of my Keurig, but it's not hot enough to dissolve the Jell-O. So I'm going to put it in my microwave for 30 seconds because you want it to be very hot. You want it to be able to dissolve the Jell-O and the sugar, and you want it all to not be clumpy. You want it to get really dissolved in there. So the only other thing, while we're waiting, the only other thing that you'll need for this is a pitcher. And it only requires a 4-quart pitcher. I think this is an 1 quart pitcher. It only requires 1 quart. This is for 1 quart. but I have like a 4-quart pitcher here, so I'm only going to fill it up to 1 quart. Alright, so now my water is nice and hot. I don't know if you can see the steam coming off of it, but it is nice and hot. Oh yeah. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pour this water in here gently. Done. I'm going to put the lid on. Now be careful. If it's really, really, really hot and you're using a glass jar, they will transfer the heat, so it will be hot, so be careful. And then I'm just going to shake it. Just going to shake it, shake it, shake it. Shake it off, shake it off. And I'm just going to mix it up really good. And it kind of made a tiny bit of a mess, but it's not that big of a deal. You can make sure that your lid is more secure than me and not make that same mistake. So now I'm going to pour it all into the pitcher. And it is all very well dissolved. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, because I don't want to lose that's a lot of sugar and a lot of salt, and I don't want to lose it, is I'm going to take my 3½ cups of cold water, and I'm going to put that in there as well. Now I'm going to put the lid on tight this time, and I'm going to shake it. And try to get all of that stuff out of there. Alright, so that's nice and shook. Get it off the top. Okay. Oh, I did a good job. That one was hard to get off. Okay, so now we're going to pour the 3½ cups of cold water in. Try not to lose any of that stuff. That's good. Alright, now we've got, it's almost at 2 quarts. So I'm going to just top it off until it gets to 2 quarts. Don't I have a bottle of water? I thought I had a bottle of water somewhere. Right. I guess it's good. It's good. It's at 2 quarts. Let's see if I can get it to level for you. See, it's at 2 quarts. There's just a tiny little bit. It only needs probably about, you know, like an 1/8 of a cup of water, but that's probably good. So now it's in this pitcher, and you can dilute it if you want to. You can add water up into the 3 quarts, so you can add an extra quart of water, and then it'll just be kind of less flavor, but I like a lot of flavor. And as you can see, that's it. And so I still have a whole almost 3/4 of a packet of Jell-O left. Oh, and I wanted to let you know, there are different kinds of Jell-O that you can go to and get in the store. You can get the Walmart brand, Great Value. You can get the run-of-the-mill Jell-O. What I like to get is the Jolly Rancher Jell-O, because it's Jell-O. It's not like anything different, but it seems to have more flavor in it. And it's only, like, the Jolly Rancher Jell-O packets were 42 cents. The Jell-O packets were 48 cents, and the Great Value packets were 40 cents. So there's like less than 10 cents difference between them. And if it comes down to my kids are not going to drink it because it doesn't taste good because I use the cheap Walmart brand, then I'm wasting all of my money if my kids don't drink it. So I spend a little extra money and get the Jolly Rancher flavors. So there you go. That is how to make homemade Pedialyte. Now you want to put this in a glass with ice at a minimum. You want to put it in a glass with ice so it's nice and cold, and the water will melt and dilute it just a tiny bit. And the trick is, now this is where it gets a little complicated. So if you're just interested in how to make the Pedialyte, you can stop the video now. But this is if your kid is very sick and you don't know what to do because they can't keep anything down and you're at the point of having to go to the hospital. This is what a doctor told me, because my kid Kylie was sick in the hospital a lot. She was at Levine for months, and this is how they told me to deal with it. So, your kid is sick. Say it is noon, and your kid is sick, and you don't know what to do. You bust out this Pedialyte, and your kid hasn't kept anything down in 4 hours. So it's not, you got them up at 9 a.m., they haven't wet in their diaper at all, and it's noon, and you can't get them to keep anything down, and they're throwing up, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to take my kid to the hospital. Here's what you do. You make this Pedialyte, and then you bust out with the tablespoon. You give them 1 tablespoon of the Pedialyte at noon. If they are able to keep that down until an hour, then you give them 2 tablespoons at 1. If they're able to keep that down for an hour, at 2, you give them 3 tablespoons, and so on, and so on, and so on. But if at noon you give them 1 tablespoon of got a call from my husband. He's having to come home. There's a crisis. Anyway, so if your kid takes the Pedialyte at noon and then throws it up at 12:15, then you have to start the clock over again. So you give them another tablespoon at 12:15, and then at 1:15 and 2:15 and 3:15 and so on and so on. If your child is not able to keep down a tablespoon of Pedialyte for 4 hours, so if at 12 you try and they throw up, if at 1 you try and they throw up, 2 they throw up, 3 they throw up, take them to the hospital. They're dehydrated and they can't keep any fluids down, and you'll have to get them fluids in an IV. But only if they can't keep anything down for 4 hours, including the Pedialyte. So there you go, and here's my picture of Pedialyte. I'm going to go make some and give some to my kid who's home now. My big is home. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and your baby's sick, but it's going to be okay. Give them this Pedialyte and they'll feel so much better. All right, bye!